Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And oh dear, it's all gone wrong for Beckham. From Goldenballs to balls up. He's taken the coin, well, 10 million of them to be exact, to push Qatar as a great place to be, and it's got a wonderful culture and history, and what a wonderful place for a holiday. Only he's now coming in from a lot of criticism, but not from where you may think. This time, it's the likes of Eric Cantona. Yes, Eric. Anyway, let's look at this article to see exactly what Eric Cantona thinks of David Beckham's push for the backward medieval state that he's backing. David Beckham is told he's made a big mistake by taking £10 million to be a paid ambassador for Qatar ahead of the World Cup, as Eric Cantona claims his old Man United teammate doesn't know what has happened there. Cantona has warned Beckham over his role as an ambassador for Qatar. The Frenchman claimed that his former teammate is making a huge mistake. Beckham agreed to be a leading figure in the build-up to the World Cup, and as part of the deal, Beckham has promoted tourism and culture in Qatar. And Cantona has now urged the Englishman to do completely the opposite thing. And the reason is the culture in Qatar. It's not very good. They treat women as second-class citizens, homosexuals get imprisoned and beaten, and there's no beer. Doesn't sound much on its own right, but remember you're going to a World Cup. There'll be a lot of very thirsty English fans and even more thirsty German fans. And when there isn't enough beer for them, there may well be trouble. David Beckham has been told he's made a big mistake in taking the ambassadorial role for the Qatar World Cup by former teammate Eric Cantona. The ex-England international has come under fire in recent months for his decision to be a face of the tournament and has been accused of duplicity in the country's sports washing campaign. Now, he's taken a lot of money, 10 million, something like that. Thank you very much for the 10 million, or thank you very much for the 10 million, the way Beckham speaks. And then he's going, yeah, it's a great place, have a holiday, look at it, it's brilliant. But he's not telling you of the thousands of people that have died making those stadia. The pitch will be red in blood. Built, it may also be added, on slave labour. And Beckham has taken the coin for this. He is an awful person. He thinks backing Qatar and saying what great people they are is worth every penny of the 10 million, regardless of how many people die and how many slaves were beaten. What does that tell you about Beckham? Well, I think Cantona's made his mind up, don't you? Anyway, Cantona, who Beckham knows well from their time at Man U, has urged the England icon to rethink his stance and suggests Beckham isn't aware of what happened there. I think Beckham knows full well what happened there, but decided that money is a better thing than a conscience. When asked if he would ever adopt a similar role to Beckham, Cantona told The Athletic, I would not do it at all. I do completely the opposite. In January 2022, I started to say that. Maybe I was the first one. But I am free to do it. And of course, an ex-player paid to do this kind of thing. It could be they don't know what's happened there. Or if they know it, I think they did wrong. I think they've made a big mistake. A big mistake, says Cantona. In February, it was announced that Beckham agreed a £10 million deal to become an ambassador for the country over the decade, which has resulted in him being the face of the 2022 World Cup. And there's a picture of Beckham and his fake top and the sheikh, who's not a fake sheikh, he's a real sheikh. And behind that, he's slipping £10 million into Beckham's pocket and saying, don't look around, don't see the slaves, don't see the dead bodies. Now, Cantona continued, if you have a player who says, I will boycott the World Cup, you say bravo, but you cannot condemn a 20-year-old player who's got a 10-year career, who lives in a world surrounded by people for football 24 hours a day. But do speak about the federations, speak about the politicians who have the power to say, no, we do not go to the World Cup. We cannot be disappointed if players don't want to boycott the World Cup, because at the top, the politicians, presidents, the federations, the ministers, they have the power to boycott it, and they haven't. In June, human rights organisation Amnesty International renewed its criticism of David Beckham after he heaped praise on Qatar but ignored its appalling human rights record. They don't have any human rights. During the interview for Neville's Sky Bet sponsored YouTube show, The Overlap, Beckham said, "Speaking as a fan, I've been coming to Qatar now for a number of years. I've seen the hospitality and the warmth of the people. I haven't seen any gay people. I haven't seen any slaves. They're well hidden. And the bodies are removed quite quickly after they die." We talk about football being for everyone. We talk about the World Cup being for everybody. And this is the first time the World Cup is being hosted in a region notorious for its lack of football and human rights. And that's an incredible moment, said Beckham. In a statement, Amnesty responded, "It's glossy and full of footballing anecdotes, but it's a shame the film makes no mention at all of Qatar's long history of labour abuses," by that they mean slavery, "and its shocking criminalisation of homosexuality or in fact of any other human rights issue." When Beckham secured his lucrative deal to be the ambassador for football in Qatar, we said he ought to use his unique profile to keep the world's focus on human rights issues. This feels like a missed opportunity. Well, of course it is, because Beckham would rather have the money than address the problem of Qatar's human rights record. And there is a monster of a man standing next to a sheikh in Qatar. Despite backlash, just 2 months later, Beckham appeared in a glossy new video to promote the despotic Middle Eastern country, calling it perfection. It doesn't have democracy. It's hardly perfection when you look at the poverty of its indigenous slave labour class. It is a horrible, horrible place. It's got a lot of wealth, confounded in one tiny position, and then the rest of it is just utter filth. In a video set against the backdrop of the capital city Doha, the former England captain calls Qatar an incredible place to spend a few days. Well, it's okay if you've got money, but if you're one of the slave labourers, not so hot. Except it is. It's very hot. It's 40 degrees and you're working 11-hour days for £1. In a voiceover to the video, Beckham says Qatar is really an incredible place to spend a few days on a stopover. The modern and traditional fuse creates something really special. The modern and traditional, the modern being all those big buildings and the traditional being the slave labour that built them, presumably. He says it's perfection. He thinks slavery and the treatment of women as second-class citizens is perfection. He's a very odd and strange adult. Until now, Beckham has not acknowledged the controversial £10 million contract to be the face of the World Cup in the Gulf state, where gay people are persecuted and misogyny is rife. It's still illegal for people to be gay there, and women face discrimination from a male guardianship system that forces them to seek approval to marry, to study or to travel. With serious issues also being raised over the country's treatment of migrant workers, Beckham has been accused of putting money ahead of principles. Well, that's not hard, because the man has no principles, but he does have a lot of money. Money he's gained by having no principles. An investigation from the Mail on Sunday found that the deaths of 2,823 foreigners of working age in Qatar have gone unexplained or unclassified, to use the official term, since 2011. While The Guardian reported last year at least 6,750 migrant workers who died in Qatar since the Games were awarded in 2010. According to Human Rights Watch, Minky Worden, official Qatari statistics show that 15,021 non-Qataris died in the country between 2010 and 2019. Not one migrant worker should die to make a World Cup possible. Yet in Qatar, thousands have. Tens of thousands. Despite this, the Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy claims the number of work-related fatalities in the World Cup projects is just 3. But they would say that, wouldn't they? And they're obviously lying. The families of the workers who died in the construction of Qatar stadiums have since called for the Qatari government to provide millions in compensation. But they won't, because they don't consider these people to be human. They're merely slaves imported to do a job, paid £1 a day to work 11-hour days, as I say, in 40-degree heat, and be treated as subhuman. They have their passports removed as they enter the country, so they don't even have the ability to leave. The Mail on Sunday revealed Beckham's deal with Qatar last February, which sparked fury from critics. Anyone who's actually got any kind of humanity in their system at all will be furious with this. Amnesty said at the time, we would urge him to learn about the deeply concerning human rights situation in Qatar and be prepared to speak about it. He's not prepared because he's a moral coward. He's ethically questionable and he's a greedy pig. He just goes money, 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 and screw the people who died to make this money for me. Veteran human rights activist Peter Tatchell said it is really disappointing that he is promoting Qatar in return for a lot of money, given its dismal human rights record. He has made a huge mistake and I hope he will think again. He won't think again. He'll just look at his bank account. I've had enough of that thick, ignorant, inhumane tosser. So I'm coming up. I will end by saying this. David Beckham is a shameful excuse for a human being. If he looked deep inside himself, he'd find a gaping abyss where his soul used to be. But if he ever wants to atone for this, he needs to give back every penny of that £10 million and give it to the charity set up to look after the families of the dead and injured. But will he? Will he bugger, because he's just not that person. He's got no humility and he's got no humanity. He's an empty soul and he's lost all respect. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Ring the bell for future notifications. Leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, don't take money from backward regimes, and goodbye.